He's the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Mr. Chairman, thanks so much for joining us.
Wolf, good to be with you. Thank you, sir.
So this latest snag, the revote that now is necessary in the House after the Senate goes along and passes it tonight, you think it's going to have any eventual impact on passing of this bill?
I don't. There's a couple of what they call birdable issues. They don't pass we have some rules over here that are pretty arcane, but my understanding is these are very, very minor changes. So it'll pass the Senate tonight, I think, and go back to the House. Well, they'll pass it then.
I know you were a holdout until recently. You were considered a likely no. You voted against it the first time around. Have you now read this entire 570-page bill and you like it?
I have. I've read every word of it and summaries, and look, there's honestly, Wolf, there are things in it I wouldn't have in there, but that's the way a legislative process works. I did everything I could, Wolf, to try to create this, to make this create smaller deficits, or at least the possibility of that. Over a $43 trillion base over 10 years, there is a possibility there would be in the range of $500 billion less in revenue than otherwise would have been created. On the other hand, with some of the other economic development issues that are underway, there's a possibility we could go over. I would have liked that to be really tidy and known that there was no way for any kind of deficit to be created. But look, I lost that, and at the end of the day, you have to decide, do you think this is better for our country or worse for our country, worse off having this? I think it's better, and I'm glad to be supporting it.
What did you get? I know you were pushing hard for what was called a backstop or a trigger option in case the deficit was exploding, as some fear it will. There would be a cut in some of those tax benefits, especially for, let's say, for corporations and for the very wealthy. In this legislation, did you get anything along those lines, any of those triggers that would stop it?
No. Look, honestly, I did not. Most of the people, look, I actually don't have a word in this bill, Wolf. My whole effort was around the macro issue of deficits. You know, I lost that battle on the Senate floor and would have been glad to let it stay on the Senate floor for another couple of days to try to resolve that. But obviously I lost that debate, and said at the time I would relook at it, and I did so. I've made calls all around the country, all around our state, talking to economic development people, chambers, people involved in foreign direct investment in our state. And, you know, I do think this is something that's going to be good for America. Again, I wish we could have contained it, as I mentioned, but look, I lost that battle, and you got to move on and then decide, you know, on face value.
But I just want to be precise, Mr. Chairman, just want to be precise. For all practical purposes, nothing really changed of substance between your no vote a few weeks ago and the yes vote you're going to have tonight.
Not really. I mean, there was some reconciliation issues that were certainly nothing that was of substance from my standpoint. I went through, you know, I've gone through the bill in detail. I've also gone through those changes. Do they make it substantially better or worse? No, they don't. They're minor. So nothing changed other than the fact that I said, look, I'll relook at it when it comes back around and try to make a decision then. You got to remember, Wolf, I was fresh off not being able to make any headway on the deficit issue when I voted no that night. I still felt there was an opportunity to possibly have a bipartisan bill. I was still in discussions with some Democrats that were interested, but at this point, you know, when it comes down to this vote, I know that is not going to happen. And do I think our country's better off having this tax reform in place versus not? I do.
Because one thing did change between the no vote and the yes vote tonight, and you know your critics are pouncing on this this provision that includes real estate partnerships as what are called pass-through entities. That was not included the first round. It is included now, and they're arguing, and there's a hashtag Corker kickback, and I want to give you a chance to respond that has resulted. This is what your critics are suggesting. That has resulted in your decision to go ahead and vote in favor of it because personally you're likely to make a lot of money as a result of it.
Yeah, so first of all, I knew nothing about the provision. I've had no involvement. It actually came out of the House. It was part of their House bill. When they did the reconciliation, it was merged in and altered slightly to make it conform. Senator Hatch has put out a statement saying, I had no input in that whatsoever. This is something that, again, has been traveling with the House bill since, as I understand it, the beginning of November. It's not just real estate, by the way. It's manufacturers and others. And just for what it's worth, I've had someone check into it. It has a very nominal impact on anything that would be involving me. So just be assured that is all total nothing, had no impact. And when I decided to vote for the bill, I'd gone through a two-page summary that noted the changes between the Senate bill and the House bill. It was a summary, and that wasn't even mentioned. I didn't even know it was a part of the changes that took place. So absolute false. And again, this affects not just real estate, but manufacturers and many others.
So how nominal will it be based on the estimate that you got from your experts? Because some of your critics are saying it could be very significant, potentially millions of dollars.
Absolutely not. I mean, you know, it is very nominal.
Do you know how much you will save as a result of this provision, which the House inserted into this final joint House-Senate Conference Committee language?
Well, let me just put it this way, Wolf. My salary each year goes to charity, and it would take many, many, many years for this little nominal thing to even account for 1 year's worth of salary. This has no impact on me that matters. It is absolutely nominal, based on a preliminary look, and we're not even sure that it has that nominal impact. So for somebody to say this has something that has a big impact on me is a total stretch, and you know, it just does not.
Here's the other point that your critics are lashing out at you, and I'm going to play the clip. This is at the beginning of October when you spoke about this legislation and its impact on the deficit. Listen to this.
I'm willing to accept a reasonable score on dynamic growth, a reasonable score on dynamic growth. Joint tax does those. There's some other groups that do it. But if it looks like to me, Chuck, we're adding 1 penny to the deficit, I am not going to be for it, okay? I'm sorry. It is the greatest threat to our nation, the greatest threat to our nation.
All right, as you know, since then, the Joint Committee on Taxation has estimated that the legislation which you're about to vote for would add about $1 trillion to the deficit, even after accounting for projected additional economic growth. So why do you support this? If this is the gravest threat, the national debt to the country right now, why support something that at a minimum will wind up adding $1 trillion to the debt?
Okay, first of all, you know, certainly I care about deficit issues. I've focused on that the 11 years that I've been here. And the actual projection from current policy is $500 billion over a $43 trillion 10-year base. So it's about 1.2% off of that projection.
Well, what happens, Senator, if they continue the tax cuts for the middle class, the reductions beyond, let's say, 2025, when they're supposed to sunset or expire? If it's passed again, then that deficit is going to continue to explode.
Yeah, and you know, if Congress continues to spend money like it's getting ready to do towards the end of the week, and next January it will do the same. So yes, I cannot control, you know, what future Congresses do. But let me get back to the point. So there is a projection based on modeling that this is going to be about $500 billion off relative to a $43 trillion projected revenue base over the next 10 years. And you know, I care about deficits. I also care about pro-growth reform. And look, critics are welcome to challenge me on this, but at the end of the day, again, as talking to people around the country on both sides of the aisle that I respect, our economic development folks in our state, our chambers, the folks who recruit on behalf of our state, and what was going to happen to foreign direct investment, the keeping of companies from creating inversions and leaving our country and leaving the employees behind. When I took all of that into account, I felt like that this was a better policy being in place.
But let me, with all due respect, Senator, Mr. Chairman, I want to just read to you again what you said. You said, if it looks to me, and you were talking to Chuck Todd on Meet the Press, if it looks to me, Chuck, like they were adding 1 penny to the deficit, I'm not going to be for it. Okay, I'm sorry, it is the greatest threat to our nation, the greatest threat to our nation. It's going to add a lot more than 1 penny, as you know.
Yeah, well, it could. It could also, there are projections that show that that's not the case, but I would have rather it been tidied up, and there have been absolutely no chance that that was the case. But Wolf, I think at the end of the day, certainly that's the way I felt during that interview. As I've looked at this policy and I've looked at the benefits to us relative to growth, this is a decision I'm making, and you know, I've explained it over and over. I said when I voted against it when it came through the Senate, I was going to look at it again, which I've done. And as I've mentioned, I feel like in spite of my concerns that I expressed very clearly in that interview, I think that our nation is better off with this policy being in place, especially
So why did you vote no, Mr. Chairman? Why did you vote no the last time it came up, and you're voting yes this time? I hate to be, you know, repetitious, but the economy is doing just great right now. The stock market's exploding, as you know. It's gone up a lot, record highs, unemployment record lows. The economic growth is really impressive. So why go ahead and vote for this now at a time of economic strength?
Yeah, for all the reasons I just mentioned, Wolf. Again, I was the only no vote that Friday night on the floor. I still felt there was a possibility to with that no vote and maybe some other things that were happening, to potentially have some Democrats come on board, but also to create a better situation as it related to the bill. And look, so I voted no. And I said at the time very clearly that I'll look at it when it comes back around. I'm doing that now. You can criticize me, but I don't really know, Wolf, what it is you're getting at. What are you trying to say here?
No, I'm not criticizing you. I just want you to give you an opportunity, Mr. Chairman, to explain, because as you know,
you've explained it 3 times.
You're getting a lot of criticism out there because you flipped the vote from a no to a yes. Let's move on to some other.
Let's talk about when you say flip the vote. You know, a bill comes through the Senate, it comes through the House. People have issues that they try to raise. This is now the final vote, and Wolf, I've always had an operating principle that when it comes down to the actual deal, this is the final vote, that I always act as if that I'm the deciding vote. And, you know, we're now at the end. The process has ended. I've been unsuccessful in solving some of the deficit issues that I'd hoped to solve. But when I make these final votes, I always make them as if I am the deciding vote. And I've tried to explain to you several times here. Look, I spent a tremendous amount of time on the phone last week with people on both sides of the aisle, trying to weigh the growth aspects of this versus the deficit issues that I've been concerned about. I announced it very clearly on Friday as to what I'm going to do. I know that I'm being maligned over totally malicious stuff that's totally been disproven. I know people are having a good time with this, but it's just malicious. I'm making this decision because I believe that it is best for the country, period. And sometimes things don't exactly line up. Your interest, I have foreign policy initiatives that I work on, and sometimes, you know, there's a tug and a pull between 2 competing principles that we have to deal with. In this particular case, it's solely because I believe our country's better off with this being in place.
Now, the reason I'm asking, these questions, Mr. Chairman, is because I want to give you a chance to respond to your critics, because you're getting some criticism, and this is a good opportunity for you to make your case. Let's get this a couple of the other senators who've been, on the fence. Susan Collins, the Republican senator from Maine, she's a critical vote on this bill. She's going to vote in favor of it. Partly, she says, because it will restore Obamacare cost-sharing subsidies down the road. But now, as you probably know, there are a whole bunch of Republicans in the House that are pushing back on that. They say they're not going to go along with that. Here's the question: is she getting played?
I think that I just got a memo from the leader, and which we do each day, and it appears to me that the Alexander Murray legislation that she's talking about is going to be a part of wrapping up this year. So I do not think she's getting played, and so I think she's been successful in achieving many of the things that she wished to achieve. Again, what she was looking for was different than what I was looking for relative to deficits, but I do not think she's getting played. No, I do not.
What about Senator Jeff Flake, who said he got a promise that the Dreamers, the DACA legislation, would be passed? As you know, there's a whole bunch of opposition for that as well. He's going to vote in favor of the legislation because in part he believes the president promised he would support that. Is he being played?
I don't think so. I know Jeff, like myself, care deeply about getting this issue resolved. I don't know what his private conversations have been, but look, around here you have to operate in good faith when people tell you things like this, and my sense is he's been successful in achieving what he wants to achieve, or he would not be voting for this legislation.
You're the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee. I want to go through some national security, foreign affairs issues with you. I know this is running a little longer than you anticipated, but these are critically important issues. As you know, Mr. Chairman, the president's relationship with the Russian president, Vladimir Putin, right now is under great scrutiny, especially following their two very recent phone calls in the past few days. I want you to listen to what the former director of national intelligence, General James Clapper, told CNN yesterday. Listen to this.
I think this past weekend is illustrative of what a great case officer Vladimir Putin is. He knows how to handle an asset, and that's what he's doing with the president.
That's what he told our Jim Sciutto yesterday. What's your reaction to that when he says Putin, a former KGB agent, is really playing the president of the United States as an asset?
I think that we've had a terrible relationship with Russia because of their actions, both in Syria, but also during our election process. And my guess is that Putin would like to improve upon that. We were helpful to them in a case that mattered to them, and I guess he did what most of us would do, and that is reach out and thank somebody for that. Look, I think you know that I've led the efforts to pass a Russia sanctions bill, and I'm no friend of the things that Russia has done to our country, nor the involvements that they've had, unfortunately, in both Ukraine and in Syria. But I think it's okay when something good happens between countries for there being an expression of appreciation like that.
You got that legislation on the Russia sanctions because of their interference in the U.S. presidential election passed in the Senate 98-2. That was back in August. As far as I know, the president, he didn't want it. He hated that legislation. He reluctantly signed it into law because he knew you would be able to override his veto. But as far as I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Chairman, the administration still hasn't started to implement those sanctions, have they?
No, that's not true. They were late. I think they were supposed to implement them by, if I can remember correctly, maybe it was October the 1st. It took until the end of the month for them to do that. They did do it, and my sense is they are doing the things that they're supposed to be doing. We'd like for them to be doing so even more avidly, no question, all of us who've been involved in this legislation, but they are moving ahead with putting sanctions in place.
And you think they'll do it, right?
Well, I know this, that that Congress is going to stay on top of it to ensure that it occurs, and we've seen no I've seen no nefarious activity as it relates to the sanctions. And believe me, my counterpart Ben Cardin and I are on the Democratic side are paying a lot of attention to this, as are people on the House side. So, I think it'll be implemented.
I know that the criticism of the president and the administration is they're, at a minimum, they're slow walking this. They're saying now it's going to take till the end of January to come up with all the sanctions. Well, let's see what they do. I know you and your ranking Democrat, Senator Cardin, will be very upset. And a whole bunch of others in the Senate and the House will be very, very angry if the sanctions are not implemented. I know you recently spoke to the president, but let me play a clip. This is one more clip I want to play for you. This is what you told CNN in October about President Trump. Listen to this.
The president has great difficulty with the truth on many issues. I think that he's proven himself unable to rise to the occasion. I think at the end of the day, when his term is over, I think the basing of our nation, the constant non-truth telling, the name calling, the things like, I think the basement of our nation will be what he'll be remembered most for. And
I know he recently tweeted thanking you for changing your vote on the tax cuts, but do you still believe what you told Manu Raju in that clip?
By the way, I didn't see a tweet from the president on my vote. Did you see one? I did not.
Apparently, did he call you? Did he thank you?
No, I called him to let him know I was voting against it 2 Fridays ago, and then I called him on Friday to let him know what I was going to do and why, but I don't remember seeing any tweets.
All right, well, maybe there was no tweet.
I know you're having a...
That may have been my mistake. But I know we thank you.
A great time with this interview.
I know we thanked you for your support, but I'm just wondering if what you said in October, if you still believe that.
Look, I know you're having a great time with this interview, and I'm happy for you in doing so. But look, Wolf, I've said what I've said, and I'm doing what I'm doing. And for me to sort of rehash all of that gives you an opportunity over the next week just to replay and replay and replay. I'm a very direct guy. I say what's on my mind and what I think, and I don't walk away when I do those things. And I'm ready to move on and deal with these issues. I don't appreciate the front end of this interview. You and I had a conversation about this yesterday on the phone, and you know that all of these things are totally malicious. They're not true, and you know that, and people in the press that are responsible know that. And I'm disappointed that you chose this opportunity to do what you did. I thank you for letting me respond. I know you've had a good time with this interview. And is there anything else that you would like for me to talk with you about?
You know, Senator, I got to tell you, and I've known you for a long time, and I have great respect. I'm not having fun, and I'm not trying to throw out militia. The only thing that you claimed was malicious was the element of that you're voting in favor of it because you're going to get some financial benefit. You explained that. You explained it well. I wanted to give you that opportunity. And when we spoke on the phone yesterday, I told you I want to give you that opportunity to make your case. This is not fun. These are critically important issues. You're a United States Senator, Mr. Chairman. You have enormous responsibility. These tax cuts are going to go forward. They may be great. They may not be great. But it's your responsibility as a U.S. Senator to answer these kinds of questions. And it's certainly not something I'm doing because I want to have fun. I'm doing it because I'm a reporter. I'm a journalist, and I'm asking you questions that are legitimate, fair questions, sir.
Yeah. Well, listen, thank you for that, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. I do. Thank you. Thank you,
I appreciate your joining us, and I wanted to give you an opportunity to answer those questions, and that's what I told you yesterday. You're going to have an opportunity. The interview went lengthy, and you've had a full chance to respond, and I'm grateful that you came on the program today. Mr. Chairman, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, let's take a quick break. Much more on the breaking news right after this.